Hi, welcome to this demo where I will show you how I implemented a basic writeback in Pelican. For this demo, I have selected StarShipIT as the source of my data, which is a platform where I can track my shipments of orders, and I'm going to use that as a source, and I'm going to update sales orders in my ERP system. And in this demo, I'm using Cin7 Omni as the ERP system. So first thing I did is I went into connections and I added a connection for my source of data, StarShipIT, and for my destination, Cin7 Omni. So for each platform, I entered the required API keys so that Pelican can make a connection. By the way, I also added a connection to, for example, BigCommerce, the e-commerce platform. So here you can add new connections. You can choose the platform that you want to connect to, select it. Then you enter your credentials. On the right-hand side, we show you where you can find them. Then you click Save. Then you have to wait a few minutes and you will see that the data starts coming in. So now we can go to the next page, Explore, and this is where you will see all of your connected platforms, and the data inside will appear as tables. For example, for BigCommerce here, I can go and look at my products. I only have two because these are demo accounts. I also have a table open here for StarShipIT, where I am looking at my unshipped orders. Now, of course, in reality, you would work with shipped orders, but this is just a demo, and these are the records that I have. So I'm going to have to match these orders in StarShipIT with my sales orders in Omni 7. And what I did is I used the reference field as the common field. So I'm assuming that the same reference exists in both platforms. So I have, for example, a shipped and unshipped order here with this reference. And now if we go into Cin7, you will see in my sales orders that I also have a sale order with a reference with the same value. Yeah, you see, by coincidence, it's in both platforms, it's called the reference. And so that's how I'm going to match my sales orders with my shipments in StarShipIT. So next thing I did is I wrote a custom query. What I typically do is I create a new database. It's like a folder in Pelican. Here it is, writeback. And that's where I put all the queries that I wrote myself. So this is a query, edit query. And let's go through that query in a few steps. So when you write an SQL query in Pelican, it will become a virtual table or a view. So I'll show you the result of this query in a bit. And by the way, I'm using SQL here, but you can also do it with our wizards. So if you don't know SQL, you can still build up this query. It's a query where I do a select, which means that I'm fetching some data, and I'm fetching it from sale order, which is my sales orders in Cin7. If you hover, you can see it. And I'm going to join it and combine it with my unshipped orders in StarShipIT. And as you can see, how I map them, how I combine them is using the reference. So the reference needs to be the same. I'm doing an inner join, which means that we will only see rows where there was actually a match. You can also do an outer join, and then you will also see all the orders, for example, in Cin7 that do not match with something we found in StarShipIT. Okay, so now which columns did we select? We selected a couple of columns from Cin7, the ID of the sale order. Why? Because we're going to need this. We're going to need this to actually update an existing sale order. We're also fetching the internal comments field, because that's the field in which we're going to write the status of StarShipIT. So that's the use case here. We want to update the status of the sale order. Whether it was shipped or not, and we're going to simply write that into the comments field in Cin7. And then we're also going to fetch the reference, which is basically the field that needs to be the same in both platforms. And from StarShipIT, we're going to fetch the status. And also this field here, which is a bit optional. It's actually the timestamp from the last update. And we're actually going to use it as a filter. So that's why we have this where clause. So we're going to only fetch the stuff from StarShipIT where the last timestamp is bigger than today minus 1 day. So basically this here, typically something you can copy paste from our documentation. This allows you to only fetch the data that changed since yesterday. That is to avoid that we're going to process the same data over and over. In a minute, we're going to see the Python script that will actually do the writeback, and it will actually process only the rows from this query. And we're going to run that Python script every day, so we only need to fetch the recently updated data from StarShipIT. Okay, so let's simply run this query. And as I told you before, this is a table. This becomes a table. Yeah, there's only one row because there's only one match. So now we can see the ID from Cin7, sales order 3. It has some internal comments because I already ran this before as a test. The reference, which is the same in both platforms, the status from StarShipIT, and the last update. Okay, so this looks great. In reality, you will have many rows here, and it will allow you to see where there's a difference. And again, this will be the input of our script. So now let's go to the third section here. This is where I have all my scripts, and I am going to first show you a very simple script. This is Python. And this is an example of how you can do an update in StarShipIT. Remember, in my demo, we're going to do it the other way around, but this is an example where we are making an update in StarShipping itself. So this line here allows you to make a connection to StarShipIT. This needs to be the same name that you used in the connection tab. So we're basically opening a connection and we're calling it StarShipIT. This is just some output to the screen. ST is Streamlit. It's a library that allows us to write output to the screen when we run our scripts. Here we're using our connection to StarShipIT. We're doing an update of an order in StarShipIT with order ID. This and the field that we're updating is the reference. We're setting the reference to this value. We're getting back a result from StarShipIT. And that's a JSON object. So we're actually showing that on the screen as a test, stjson.result. So now when I click run, it will actually run my script and it will make the update. So this is the title that we wrote to the screen in line 3. It's making the update, and line 6, it's showing the result, and that's what you see here. So it's a big JSON, but the only thing that's important for us is status success, which means that that actually worked. The update was actually done. Cool, we can now close that. And now let's go back to my other script here. This is the script where I'm actually fetching data from the source, StarShipIT, and I'm using that to update Cin7. But remember, the way how we do it is by actually fetching that query, that join, which gives us all the information already combined between the two platforms. So you're doing that with PQ, which means pelican.loadTable. This function here allows you to fetch the data from a table, any table. And so here the table that we're using is actually the query that I wrote. Remember, it's still open here. It's the same name that I'm using. You can always hover to see if that's the right table that you want. And you can also see all the fields, and this makes sense, right? We included an ID, we included internal comments, reference status, and the timestamp. By the way, it's also showing you in blue a sample value, so you can really get a feeling of what's actually inside that data. Okay, so we're also making a connection, this time to the destination, Cin7. Again, this needs to be the exact same name that you use under connections. We're fetching those rows from the query. We're putting it in a variable that we call orders. Here, I'm actually just showing that as a table. It's more for testing, right? It doesn't have to be there. And here comes the most difficult part of the script. Here, we're actually doing a loop, a for loop, which means that we're going over all these orders one by one. Again, this is something you can copy paste. Orders is what we got from the table. We are fetching the rows, and they're going to go into these two parameters. I is just an index, you don't need it, and order will be one line of that table. Here we're writing some text to the screen, again optional, just for testing. And here we're actually making the update in Cin7. Cin7, we're doing an update. We're not adding something, we're not deleting something, we're updating something. What are we updating? A sales order. Which sales order? The one with a certain ID. And the ID is the column, is coming from that column ID from our query. Remember, when I hover, you can see that there's an ID column, and that is actually the sale order ID from Cin7. What are we updating? The internal comments. And what we're putting inside is this text, StarShipIT ID status, plus the actual status from the query. So this is the status coming from StarShipIT. One more time, let's go to the table. You can see that it has a field status. Here it is. And that is the status shipped, unshipped from StarShipIT. So that's what we're, this whole thing together is what we're writing into Cin7, and plus actually combines two strings or two pieces of text. And you can see that I added a small space here so that it's going to look nice. Okay, so we're going to get a result from Cin7. Might fail, might succeed. If that result status is in error, then we will show it on the screen. If it's fine, if it succeeded, we will not show anything. Okay, I'm going to run my script. So again, it's showing a title because we added a title there. It's showing that table because of line 6 here, the data frame, which is basically just a table. So this is the input of our script. It's going to go over the rows one by one. There's only one row. We're outputting some text here where we're actually showing you that we're making an update of a sale order with this reference, and the new status is unshipped. That's basically it. So now typically what you do is you schedule this to run, for example, every hour or every day. And yeah, that's it. From now on, it will keep the status between StarShipIT and Cin7 in sync. And now if you go back to a table from Cin7, it's not immediately going to be refreshed. Keep that in mind. You will still see the old data here because it's only every hour that Pelican will fetch new data from Cin7. But if you want to, you can force a refresh from your script. I didn't include it here in the demo, but there's one extra line you can add so that when it's done, it will actually refresh the data. So then you will also see the updated data here. Of course, you can also log in into Cin7 to double check if that update was done correctly. Of course, in a similar way, you can implement multiple writebacks or data syncs. For example, a different one that goes in the other direction from Cin7 to StarShipIT. You could include BigCommerce. You could include 2 or 3 sources, combine the data, and then send it to a destination. There's many things you can do. Thank you.